to be part of this momentous occasion. I thank you very much for extending this invitation to me, as much as it's very interesting the way it came about. I'd also like to recognize the presence of my colleagues who came with me. Faith Yego. Faith Yego is pursuing her doctoral studies in public health at the University of Newcastle. Gladys Chama is pursuing her doctoral studies in education at the University of Newcastle. We are both students. We work for the government of, we're all students working for the government of Kenya. And then our very close friend Zach. Zach has been here a little longer than that. He's an IT specialist, having finished his master's in IT. He now works for the TAFE Newcastle. They were all pleased to come together with me, but more so to ensure that I'm safe. Because we weren't so sure whether this organization actually exists. So they said, you can't go alone, we'll go together with you and see what happens. I'll briefly really look at my address on filling the development gap with a lot of charity in developing countries. And when Peter asked me to come and give this talk, I asked him, how did you come to get to know me? And after a little while, I said, okay, it's good to adventure. Let me go and see what happens. As a typical public servant, I will read from a prepared speech so that if there are any people from the press, they might not misquote me. Yeah, as I was preparing for this, I came across a very interesting, because I thought you can't talk about charity without talking about Mother Teresa. And you can't talk about charity, really, without mentioning a number of things that Mother Teresa did. And when she was asked by a journalist why she was involved, she said this, like a man says to me, you are spoiling the people by giving them fish to eat. You should have to give them a rod to catch the fish. And Mother Teresa said, my people cannot even stand still. Let's hold a rod, but I will give them fish to eat, and when they are strong enough, I will hand them over to you, and you give them a rod to catch the fish. And he said that's a beautiful combination. But nevertheless, she did not say who the you was. And I think at this moment we could be the we, or we could be the you she was referring to. The chairman, members of the board, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to express my sincere appreciation for the invitation to this noble event. I feel humbled and honored that at the same time by your decision. Nevertheless, I cannot also imagine the courage and boldness of your honorable chair to invite somebody they have never met to such an important occasion. In the calendar of the organization, what a brave decision to make. I can only describe that as a leap of faith. Believing that actually I existed in the real world. I'm conscious of the fact that I am in the company of so many accomplished and renowned people, as well as many others whose business is to interpret and analyze words. When in such a company, any self-respecting student ought to be very careful about what he or she says. I will therefore try to tread very carefully, and I will avoid facts and figures where possible, where I can be challenged, carefully navigate my address safely away from the turbulent waters of academics. I noted Peter Chen is a renowned academic, and the logic of charity, but try to anchor my address this evening more on a personal and a lay point of view, relating more to the issues at a personal level, and also as a recipient and a beneficiary of acts of charity. Throughout my education, I've benefited from a lot of acts of charity. I'm a chiefening scholar, having studied for development economics at the University of Manchester, courtesy of the British government. I am in Australia at the University of Newcastle, courtesy of the University of Newcastle and the government of Kenya. I've therefore benefited from charity. And that is why I thought that even if I didn't know these people, they are following a noble cause, which maybe I could make a contribution one way or another. For me, this is not only a special occasion, but a unique one too. It brings people whose endeavors are changing and saving lives. We are not gathered here to watch or support a favorable team in the Rugby World Cup, AFL Championship, or debate an important national issue. Important as those may be, we are here to act. Enable a mother or a child who is otherwise threatened with death to have a chance of living. Our being here is a testimony that individual and collective contribution matters to a society. In Kiswahili we say, haba na haba ujaza kibaba. Loosely translated to mean, bit by bit, eventually fills the container. I would therefore echo St. Francis of Assisi's words with a lot of confidence when he said that where there is charity and wisdom, there is neither fear nor ignorance. I believe we are here for a purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered to promote a cause that unites a special group of people everywhere. Those who sacrifice for the people they may never meet or may never see in life. That is a powerful bond, and that bond is charity. Charity is therefore a favorite subject for many studies on human behavior, with interest found among psychologists, anthropologists, economists, and marketers, all making contribution to the subject. Originally, in Latin, the word caritas meant preciousness, dearness, or high price. However, the English translation is more direct. It is love. We are here because of charity. We are here because of love. Those who are gathered here are today not seeking fame or seeking high office. It is those who have realized how wonderful it is that nobody needs to wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Because unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. We may be few in numbers, and we may not do everything, but we have a big heart, and we can do something. We should not therefore let what we cannot do interfere with what we can do. We can do something. I know we cannot do much, but we can do something. We should not let what we cannot do interfere with what we can do. Ladies and gentlemen, it's worth noting that none of the goals that Kenya government has set for themselves as a nation can be achieved by the government alone. They can't. Organizations like Piye are therefore critical in mobilizing resources and acting as catalysts in the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals, thereby building a brighter and a secure future for generations in Kenya. In Kenya, as at 2003, 56% of the population was still living below poverty line, with a projection at the current trend that 65.9% of the Kenyan population would be living below poverty line by 2015. For the poor, things may only get worse, not better. It is therefore, for that reason, that a great joy to know that over and above the government's sole role, funds already raised by Piye, today's contributions and proceeds of future activities are to be applied to projects uplifting human lives in Kenya and bringing the country one step closer to achieving the Millennium Development Goals. Turning to the specific focus of today's proceeds, it is saddening to note that approximately 30 million pregnant women in Africa are exposed to the risk of malaria infection every year. In areas of intense transmission like Kenya, the infection during pregnancy is usually asymptomatic, not showing or producing any symptoms of the disease, and therefore remains undetected and untreated despite the presence of the disease in the placenta. This leads to the maternal anemia and low birth weight babies. Anemia in pregnancy is estimated to affect up to 50% of pregnant women in malaria-endemic countries in Africa, such as Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, in Australia and other developed countries, women embark on pregnancy with little or no fear for their own safety. In Africa, in areas with high malaria transmission, infection during pregnancy is estimated to cause as many as 10,000 maternal deaths each year. 8 to 15% of all low birth weight babies and 3 to 8% of all infant deaths. That is from malaria-related causes alone. If you are in poverty and malnutrition, then the figures become unimaginable. It is proven fact that insecticide-treated nets decrease both the number of malaria cases and malaria death rates in pregnant women and their children. A study in an high malaria transmission in Kenya has shown that women protected by insecticide-treated nets every night during their first 4 months of pregnancy produce 25% fewer underweight or premature babies. In addition, insecticide-treated nets use benefits the infant who sleeps under the net with the mother by decreasing the exposure to malaria. Therefore, insecticide-treated nets should be provided to pregnant women as early in pregnancy as possible, and their use should be encouraged for women throughout pregnancy and during the postpartum period. Piye's initiative is therefore spot on and very critical. The financing of MDGs in Africa still remains a big challenge, as at the end of 2005, only 5% of the 23 OECD largest donors had attained the required 0.7% of the gross national product as official development assistance. If the donor countries would have delivered on the overseas development commitment, aid would be in the tune of 165 billion shillings, $1 billion a year, which is about 3 times the current level and above the current estimate of what is needed to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. At the Monterey conference, where donors reviewed what the MDGs were supposed to look at, promised an increase of $18.5 billion per annum in aid. Yet, by the end of the year, they only delivered on $2 billion. The Millennium Declaration also required the international community to support Africa through increased foreign direct investment, a fairer trading system, and a debt cancellation, yet to date, there are no improvements in honoring this call. If you looked at the state of debt of the most developing countries, at times you'd cry. You'd cry, why? Because the principal debt for most of these countries were paid long time ago. They are left servicing heavy interest and penalties on the repayments, which can't be cancelled. I remember, with all the due respect, sitting in Treasury and trying to reschedule an Australian loan to the Kenya government, which was designated in Australian shillings. I looked at the entire thing, that was a long time ago. The Kenya government paid the principal amount ages. But because of accumulated penalties and late repayments, Kenya government is still owes about 1.5 billion Kenya shillings to the Australian government. After such a sumptuous dinner, it is not my intention to bore you with figures, but I needed to do that to drive a point home. One can hardly imagine that all these are happening in the 21st century. Today, I know we are constrained by our own domestic affairs. We think of a future with hopes even in this time of recession. But when we live in a developed country, when we in developed countries suffer from such crises, people in the developing countries suffer even much more. But as President Obama said, and I love to say President Obama, because if I'm in America or I'm in Kenya, I would say Obama is my cousin. Since we in Kenya believe Obama is still a Kenyan, and to add more so is that because my name begins with an O, that says that we belong, father and Obama's father and my clan speak the same language. So, we brothers. He's saying we are not only responsible for our future, we are responsible for the future of the world too. I believe when he said we are the we that he was referring to. It could not be in America, but I think he was referring to people like us who can look forward to helping those whom they have never met. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I wish to thank you for being part of this great initiative. Your mutual support and efforts together will make a huge contribution towards the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals in Kenya. For my parting shot, I wish to quote a few quotes from the paradoxical commandments of leadership, which advises us that the biggest men with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men with the smallest minds, but think big anyway. People really need help, but many may attack you if you do help them. Help them anyway. Give the world the best you may have, and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you have anyway. In conclusion, I wish us to remember the words of Deborah Rainey, a South African author, who said, "You can do everything well when it is done right, with the right intention, especially when your intention comes from a place of love." Thank you and good night.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Sylvester can take some questions. We don't have a lot of time on our hands, but some few questions. All right, the lady over there.
It's a bit of a dishonest question, but I said up front. Are you Luo?
Yeah. Unfortunate.
Just needed to know.
Are you what? Any other questions?
I have have a question for you.
Yeah.
How much do you believe that Kenya's development should depend on development aid from other countries, and how much should it depend on its own sustainability, its own industry, for instance?
I look at that in terms of the global politics.
Okay.
It's been proven between 1991 and 1994, Kenya as a government didn't get any development aid. Nevertheless, the rate of economic growth was no different within those periods. I will also look at, yes, what is the role of development aid? In most of the times, I think that Kenya as a country can generate enough funds, to develop. But you have to look at that in the context of historical developments and also in terms of the investments that the governments have made to date. That dependence on aid cannot be stopped today because Kenya already has got commitments. So that forces us to still go on that development aid trajectory. I'm not going also to underemphasize maybe in a number of cases where development aid has been misappropriated. But with all the due respect, that for every development aid that has been misappropriated, there is a corresponding donor agent also responsible. But we don't get to hear about that. I started my career at the Treasury. I worked at the government investment department. There are a number of development aid projects that Kenya has undertaken that has led it down the drain instead of helping it develop. But that is politics. I believe as it is now, Kenya's budget, almost 90% is funded locally and does not depend on development. But I also know there are a number of massive infrastructure projects that the government depends on foreign aid. I think there needs to be a right balance and complementarity. What I would advocate if I had the opportunity is that this aid should be given on favorable terms. Having worked in Treasury and having worked in debt management department, the World Bank, the IMF, and the development banks had some of the most difficult loans to manage because these loans were designated in what they call special drawing rights. There is no currency in the world called special drawing rights. It is an amalgamation of 5 currencies. They would give you the loan in an amalgamation of these 5 currencies: the Dutch mark, the yen, the Swiss franc, the sterling pound, and the 5th one was what?
The dollar.
Yeah? The dollar. But they would recall it not in the same proportion they gave you, which means that they would give you at times $100 million, but because the dollar is appreciating, you end up repaying the loan in about $200 million. And what at that time, before 2000, before 2000 years, you could not know what you owe the World Bank because your loan was pooled. And they would tell you, next 6 months, deposit the amount due in the Bank of Tokyo in Japanese yen. Next time you will see it because your loan is pooled, you don't know which other countries are there, they will say that because the currency of country X has depreciated and you are sharing the risk, your loan has therefore appreciated. So it was difficult. It was only after 2000 that they managed to allow the developing countries to pool these loans into one currency of their choice. Even at the bilateral level, the bargaining is extremely poor, if to say the least. because you don't negotiate for the loan rescheduling and Paris Club face to face. You don't. Somebody comes and tells you, okay, Australia have said they'll give you a 10% discount on your loan, and then shuttles across, and then they say, okay, Kenya is saying this. You don't even know whether they're telling you the truth. And after you've signed the agreed minutes, then you begin shuttling from one capital to the other to sign the individual bilateral agreements. By the time you finish signing all these agreements, the discount you are given at Paris Club is spent in travel. Because each country will schedule it. So it's been really quite an unfair playing field. But upshot is that developing countries still need the aid. But they need to have more say on where they channel it. They need to have more say on how they borrow it. They need to have more say on where they invest it. I'm speaking especially for Kenya. Yeah.
Have you had anything to do with micro-lending in small communities, and is it a good tool for development, or is it something that the community ends up in debt as well and develops problems, or does it work in other words as a development tool?
Small communities work, but because of the problems Kenya had, we moved from one extreme end to the other. When the donor community stopped giving government aid, they focused on small communities. The biggest problem at that time was that small communities were being seen by the government as their enemies. Because that was the time of political change, and these people were being seen to be in the opposition. So they did not get any government support in doing that. I think that relationship has been restored. Therefore, there is a role. If the small communities come up and the government comes up, then there is a way of doing this thing. In fact, when you were coming, I was talking to Peter that maybe now that Piye started, when you're going to do a project, then you can see who is on the ground, who is the government person on the ground, because the government also could be having such funds. So that if Piye could maybe give 10 nets, the government can maybe give 5 nets. So that it also becomes, when that happens, then there's monitoring and evaluation and they're scaling up, so that you work in tandem. You don't go and duplicate, so that you don't just work separately. So I believe very much that there is a huge role for community development. It not only helps in development, but it also helps in capacity building for these people to be able to manage their projects.
What would your words in a sort of package? On one hand, you're saying that the poverty in Kenya is growing, and growing quite from 55% to 68%, whatever was it, in 4 or 5 years. And on one side, also you're mentioning that basically the way you infrastructure your aid is through the government channel. My friend in here asked a question, and I'm quite frankly thinking that way, that with all this discussion, it comes to the point that it looks that the Kenyan government obviously is not a successful history behind that, solving the problem, especially when you're even mentioning that when it's going to Paris Club, is negotiating in a way, we can't say it is not in the national interest of the Kenya. All the decision has been made based on the foreign currency. So it's not in the national interest. It's not a good time for Kenyan people maybe to think in a different structure or a different way of solving the problem. It looks obviously there is no democratic way of solving the issues there. And as you mentioned, when the community help is going there, the government is thinking that these guys are against the government. Obviously there is a fundamental problem there. And while you quite correctly brought a lot of sanctions from Madame Teresa and others, but I honestly think there is a fundamental problem on the countries like Kenya and many, many other third world countries that is the government itself. And I'm sorry, I'm not in here to dialogue or discuss the politics of the issues, but I think that is the problem. I think that There is no good government in neither of these countries, and unfortunately, as you have been sponsored by the government and obviously quite an intelligent person, and I feel welcome the way you are approaching the subject, but my own background experience, I think there is a problem with the fundamental issue of the wrong government in the wrong time. And unless you solve that issue, unless you touch that fundamental problem, I don't think by helping drop by drop will solve the problem of the Kenya or Africa. I just was talking with my colleague friend in here, I was saying even in South Africa, we can see poverty is growing. There is a major issues on those countries, and that is, I hope one day we will see that the spring of Africa to come as we start from Arab spring. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you to an extent, but it also seems as if maybe we looked at Kenya up to a period. If we are talking about 1990s, 80s, maybe, we'll notice that Kenya proclaimed a new constitution last year, which is being implemented.
By the influence of the Obong'o, let's be honest.
No, okay, we must say that whether it is the influence of Obama or who, it has been implemented in Kenya. Is it bringing changes? It is bringing changes. In Kenya now, a member of parliament and minister, totally separate. If you contest a political seat, you cannot go to a public office for 10 years. You can't be appointed an ambassador, you cannot be appointed anything, any public office. Therefore, if maybe we knew about Kenya at that time, I'm not saying that Kenya has not had its problems. Yes, Kenya has had its problems, like any other country has had. But I'm saying you cannot develop a country assuming and not collaborating with the government. They can even buy you from going there. If we look at that being the case there, and I'm saying, and that's what I'm saying, I'm very clear, I'm not saying that the amounts raised here should be passed to the government, no. I'm saying yes, when Piye goes on the ground, they need to work in tandem with the government. Because even if poverty is increasing, it is not that the government is not doing anything. We must be very clear about that. It is only that they, due to the economic growth rate and the population growth rate, are not commensurate with the growth of the country. That's why the gap is increasing. We can talk about problems in Africa. We can talk about problems in other countries. We can talk about problems in other families. But I think there's a point of change. When people say that, yes, we need to change. Before we came for our PhD here, the 5 of us, the Kenya government had stopped sponsoring PhD in the year 1995. We can't say that because Kenya government stopped sponsoring PhD in 1995, but we are here, and it is because the government wants to change. There could be cases of corruption, but having worked in the government, for every of those misappropriated donor funding, I can point exactly the opposite in the developed country. So I think we are here on a noble course. We could be having our weaknesses, we could be having our problems, but I'm saying that yes, this meeting is going to have an impact on a child. We must begin somewhere. We must not despair. We must not despair because of the problems. If it was not for the American Civil War, America would not be united. Challenges are there in this world, but let us not focus on the challenges, let us focus on the opportunities. We have opportunity to make a difference.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for that really quite graceful way of putting things that I'm receiving quite nicely. And I wanted to ask something that went slightly in an opposite direction, because I haven't been back to Kenya since '98, and the last time I studied Kenya was '99. But what's for sure is that in 1999, none of the Kenyan specialists predicted the kind of world changes that happened in Kenya in the year 2000. In 1999, nobody thought that Kenya was close to being a democracy. Nobody expected there to be democratic elections, all of which happened with such haste and speed in the 2000s that the West was very quick to come in and say, oh, yes, look at the mess that followed, but what a lot of people forgot is that democratic elections were not expected anytime soon. So Kenya has been through such massive changes, which necessarily shake things up. So that's the last I saw of Kenya. So I wanted to ask you what your opinion was on. I'm quite optimistic about Kenya at the moment because of how quickly it's come this far when nobody was expecting it to go this far. So I guess I wanted your take on the sort of where the government is at the moment with the sort of the healing process in a truly democratic sense, and also how we know that Kenya has done quite well after all this talk of global financial crisis. Actually, it hasn't affected East Africa or at least Kenya that much. But one of the problems, as you said, is probably rising poverty levels. And how, in your opinion, is the Kenyan government dealing with this kind of these new opportunities, but also the kind of the pressure of globalization and neoliberalism and the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer?
Yeah. There has been tremendous opportunities, especially after the new constitution.
Yeah.
The budgeting system is no longer centralized.
Right.
In Kenya, we set up 47 new counties, right, where it is already clear in the constitution how much of the national budget goes to each county. In each county, there will be a parliament sitting there. It is an evolved system now. The choosing of public officers is so open that even I think some of the developing countries were wondering. We had a new chief, the constitution said that a new chief justice is to be chosen. And it is chosen through a competitive interview. Everybody who feels they are qualified apply for the position. The interviews are done in public. So you can go and listen. If you have got anything against the person, then from that interview, that is taken then to the parliamentary vetting committee. If you think that this person has gotten themselves involved in any act of corruption, then the parliamentary committee will follow that up. Before the name is taken to the president for final appointment, the name is also debated in the floor of the House. Therefore, the Chief Justice, who is currently been in office for the last 120 or so days, is not a government functionary. Same as the Deputy Chief Justice. Under the new constitution, the Kenya government set up the Supreme Court of 7. 5 members of the Supreme Court were not part of the government. In fact, one of the members came from the US, has been lecturing there. So the system has drastically changed, that the landscape is not really what we used to read about. You can't get a job now because you are related or you know so and so. Unless another revolution takes place to take us back to that, according to the constitution now, you can't. Because all public positions are advertised and the criteria clearly set. The interviews for those major positions are done in public. Anybody can go and listen to them, and they can send their sentiments about the candidates. That's never been seen. And so I think for me that the country has made a good time. One thing also, politics where people used to defend a lot of their cronies has been made extremely unpopular or not something to aspire for. Because if you are contesting for a member of parliament, you cannot contest for the presidency. So you either go for one seat. And if you are a member of parliament, you cannot be a cabinet minister. Cabinet ministers will be chosen from among the professionals. And this will be advertised, it is public, and those who are qualified will apply for that. That has really cut off the corruption networks, because corruption only thrives in a network. I do you a favor because I will cover you up. I am in this post until the president feels otherwise. in this case, things, offices like the Attorney General are for a fixed term. Offices like the Director of Public Prosecution are fixed term of 8 years, period. So really, that has changed the entire landscape. And when the new constitution came, it was very clear that those key offices had to be filled afresh. So the old guys left. Those who were appointed by political cronies. So I think, personally, I believe we are headed to the right direction. If you look at revenue collection, between 1998 and 2005, the revenue collection has more than tripled. We've seen massive infrastructure projects coming up. That is for sure. If you are in Nairobi in 1998, you wouldn't know Nairobi now. There are underpasses and overheads. Yeah, the highway to the airport is 6 lanes. By 2013, we'll have a high-speed train to the airport. The station is already being built. It's starting next year. The tender has already been done. There is a second port that is being done in Lamu that is going to connect Kenya and the southern Sudan with a rail station. So the landscape has really changed.
And what about income redistribution? Income redistribution, what you were talking about.
Income redistribution, because of the opportunities, you notice that a lot of the funding issues are there. Since the new government came in 2002, a lot of the funds and development has been devolved at the constituency level, and it will therefore be devolved at the country level. Pressure is therefore being gotten out of the central focus. So income distribution is going to improve. In fact, like even schools, every county is going to have their major centers. Referral hospitals are being set up in each and every county so that we don't concentrate this in the city. So for me, I'm extremely optimistic. That's why I can't wait to finish and go back.
All right, thank you very much, guys. I know there's still a few more questions left, but you can get in touch with Mr. Obong'o. Got further questions, but I'm afraid we're going to stop it at that point. Thank you very much, Mr.